That the only link between Al-Qaeda and Iraq is the letter Q. If they wanted to come up with a convincing conspiracy to attack Iraq, they could have come up with a lot better one than that. And I would also disagree that people only care about people near to them and close to them. I was amongst 3 million people who went down to London to protest against the possibility of an Iraq war. I say that's a lot of people caring a heck of a lot about people in a land that is probably closer than New York.
I didn't say that they don't care. Okay.
The fellow with the moustache here, then the lady in red hair, and then you.
I have a quick question. You said at the beginning you were a chemical engineer, and presumably there are a lot of...
Not professional chemical engineer.
And presumably there must be professional engineers who are 9/11 truthers. I was just wondering, your only source for a lot of your information appears to be YouTube videos. I was wondering why. Well, you haven't used any sort of peer-reviewed journals, and I was wondering if you could explain why you haven't used them or they don't exist.
First of all, getting things published in a peer-reviewed journal is exceptionally difficult when they're politically contentious like this. And secondly, the source of YouTube videos is mainly because things that have been posted elsewhere end up getting posted on YouTube, and they're very easy to access there. That's the only reason that I'm really using YouTube. I could have easily used for most. In fact, most of the stuff that I've given you tonight, is actually on a different website called Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, which is endorsed by 1,500 qualified and verified architects and engineers. Not that I want to make that an appeal to authority, because an appeal to authority, of course, is not part of the scientific method, and we are dealing with skeptics here, so we should be dealing in the evidence, not the appeals to authority. And the evidence is available through YouTube, so that's as good as anywhere else.
The woman with red hair.
Yeah, this is kind of echoes the previous speaker, but I just wanted to make a point. I'm not sure it was addressed very well. I was actually in New York on 9/11, and so my experience and evidence is based on my own eyes, rightly or wrongly, and when shit happens, and it was fucking scary, not because it wasn't, all kinds of things get confused about what's going on. What I was actually doing in New York at the time was, and sorry, I'm going to sound a wanky here, but anyway, vulgar language, sorry, don't like it. I was working in a home for homeless people with HIV and AIDS and major drug problems, all of whom, well, the majority of whom were from the South, who were black, had a lot of issues. To me, the conspiracies that weren't addressed were the day that Wall Street reopened, people were dying because there were no phone lines in Chinatown, they couldn't call ambulances. People where I was living at the time were getting shot and having feuds, and really serious things. And in some ways, I actually don't care because about the other stuff, because actually governments do lie all the time, and there are so many more conspiracies that seem more relevant than this big spectacle. And I'm really, I guess I'm interested in situations a lot, and whoever did this created this big spectacle that's diverted all this attention from everything else. And one of the things I hope was going to be discussed today was how it's had an impact on people's perspectives and the energy it has drained out of wider activism, for want of a better word. And I do apologise for swearing, but I feel slightly disillusioned that I didn't think this was today about 9/11, to be honest, because you're right, there's lots of websites for and against, and I don't belittle everything you're saying. There's some really convincing arguments on both sides, and I'm just, on an emotional level, I think it's a red herring.
I was one of the people arguing that
You're next, the fellow there in the check shirt.
I just noted down some questions during the Skeptics little speech. I want you to answer 2 of about 4 questions, so you can pick which ones you want to address. The first one's a little frivolous, but maybe not.
these are at Paul and not me, right?
Yes, sir. How did the BBC report that Building 7 had collapsed due to fires before it had collapsed? Why did many of the 9/11 Commission members themselves, I think number 6 out of 10, say that 9/11 was not properly investigated?
So, sorry, who said that?
Why the 9/11 Commission members themselves said that the investigation was not done properly?
Do you know what their names are?
Yeah. Thomas Keane was one of them.
Thomas Keane.
Yeah.
One of them actually said...
He went very far, Steve, you all know.
Yeah. One of them actually said, if this is a conspiracy, then it's a 60. Then it's a, what did he say? 60-year conspiracy. I think he said. If this is a conspiracy,
the commissioners themselves said that the investigation was flawed, at the very least.
One of them resigned in disgust. Matt Cleland.
Yeah, indeed.
Matt Cleland. This investigation is a compromise and it's a shame. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I want it. Exactly. All 3 World Trade Centers were pulverized into fine dust which enveloped Manhattan and was visible from space. If 2 planes caused 3 huge skyscrapers to collapse in New York City, why is there such minimal damage at the Pentagon?
I noticed a couple of times via architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth websites come up, and it's a petition of, I think, 1,500 nearly suitably qualified people. And this always just reminds me of the Discovery Institute's similar petition of scientists who support creationism. And in that, scientists include people with no real expertise in biology. And again, with this petition, it includes nuclear engineers, it includes software engineers, it includes landscape architects, and actually accounts for about 0.1% of the architects in America. And every so often, you see, creationists like to debate with real scientists in forums much like this, rather than go through peer review, because they're kind of, you know, they know a lot of facts that they can kind of fire off one at a time, and it creates an illusion of equality. And actually, when they go through peer review, you find out that the whole thing can be quite demolished fairly easily by people who've got the time and inclination to do so, and all the resources and research availability. And so a petition is incredibly uncompelling. And when we had a discussion about this on the Skeptics forum, I don't know who it was posting kind of in favour of the conspiracy theory, but they repeatedly, I kind of repeatedly said, why don't you go and ask somebody who's qualified in structural engineering about this stuff? And the response was quite often, well, we've got 1,500 signatories who are all suitably qualified. But yeah, those are the 1,500 most amenable to your argument. If you want to demonstrate that suitably qualified people agree with you, you have to go through the peer review process, no matter how difficult you think that is. And I think you should just drop the petition as ridiculous.
Okay.
Two more people, Hugh there with you.
I'll try and make it very quick. Question for Paul. The debunkers claim that the initiation of the collapse of World Trade Center 1 and 2 was basically the steel being weakened by the fires, yeah? So they said that the initiation point was where the planes impacted. Well, on NIST's own photographs, there's a lady stood in the gaping wound of the building, waving and shouting for help. Her name was Edna Sintron. Now, for the collapse to initiate there, that would have to be the hottest part of the building. Now, if the steel was so hot that it lost 80% of its strength, how was a human being made of flesh and bone able to stand there without being melted and killed? She stood there in the open wound, waving for help.
That's a lot of Paul.
It's cold.
That's a lot of Paul.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I'm not going to be able to cover them all, but I mean, the molten steel one about like why were there rivers of molten steel at the base of the wreckage, I think is the question that was being asked. Well, I mean, according to 911research.com, which is obviously advocating controlled demolition, they're saying that the residual fires were burning at 3,000 degrees centigrade. You know, stuff that's buried under the rubble is burning really, really intensely, and the melting point of steel is 1,400 degrees centigrade. So I don't see why it would be problematic that you would actually find molten steel at the base of the Twin Trade Towers. It doesn't mean that the molten steel kind of poured down from the top of the building before it fell. It just means that there's metal in there. You've got fires burning at 3,000 degrees centigrade. And I'm only quoting 9/11 research here. You know, let me finish, please. So I don't see that there's anything really extraordinary about the fact that you would have molten steel at the bomb. Can I answer my questions and I'll totally hand it back to you? Yeah? So there was another one about the lady in the hole. I mean,
Edna Sintron.
Yeah. I mean, sorry, I don't know her. But yes, I mean, you know, that's somebody who stood in the big hole that was made by the planes, yeah, waving. Well, the simple thing is that that's the entry point for the oxygen and for the air that's going to feed the fires. Fires, as you know, sort of pull oxygen in. They always do. You've always got a flow pattern like that. She's getting, air from outside passing her, heading in towards the flames. So she's not going to be exposed to intense heat.
She was stood on the steel girders.
Yeah, right, on the outside of the building,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean there's no actual flame behind her if you look at that picture. She's not stood with flames immediately behind her like she's next to a bonfire. She's actually stood out near the front of the building, and there's nothing of intense heat immediately behind her. Any sort of atmospheric heat, because obviously we know that it's not just the flames themselves, it's the hot air. It's going to be moving in towards the centre of the building where the fires are, through the only place where air can get in. I just don't see how that means that it was a controlled demolition. It just means that it wasn't hot when it stood at the side of the
It
building.
just shows that it's uneven temperatures, yet we've still got a symmetrical explosion.
But you have to bear in mind that the actual size of these buildings is massive. It's easy to sort of somehow imagine that the base of the Twin Trade Towers is the size of this room. They weren't. They were enormous buildings. I mean, just massive. So she could have been at a distance from the fire, with air coming in towards her, so she's not getting, she's not being burned by hot air. The flames are actually sort of considerable distance away from her. I just don't see that means that there were explosives used to blow up the building. It just means she wasn't stood next to the flames. There was another one about, well, did some people resign from the commission because they weren't happy with the report? Well, I'm not disputing that. In any group where people are trying to sort of make a report and make complex decisions, because of course you're going to get people who are saying, I'm not satisfied with the quality of this investigation. It doesn't mean that they're saying, I'm not happy with this investigation because I think it was a controlled demolition. They're saying that, the NIST report they didn't feel was thorough enough. Well, you get that all the time when you've got groups of people investigating stuff. Somebody's going to resign. The important thing is that the majority of people didn't feel like that. It's okay for somebody to sort of say, I no longer want to be part of this investigation. Maybe because they feel it's not meeting the rigorous standards that they demand. That's not the same as saying that they left because they thought it was a controlled demolition. And they haven't come forward in public and said, the reason I resigned was because I'm convinced it was a controlled demolition. They're just saying, I don't think this is up to the standards that I think it should be, and that's why I don't particularly quote NIST. I don't sort of use it as this kind of sacred cow that holds my whole argument together. There may well have been things that weren't adequate about it. That is not to say that the people who resigned said it was an inside job. They didn't, and if they have come forward and said that, I'd love to see their quotes.